Okay, it's good. Okay, all right. 6:01 PM, Tuesday, June 16th, Planning Commission meeting will call to order. Roll call.
Tom Hassel present.
Alan Eager present.
Tushar Desai present.
Lou Yang present.
Paul Buckle present.
And we have got the entire CDRB members accounted for. So we've got the full panel of members today. Next, we'll be going to approval of the agenda. Are there any questions, issues with the agenda?
I make a motion to approve it. Chair and Commission staff does not have any amendments to the agenda as presented.
Okay. Paul makes a motion.
Second, Lou.
Paul makes a motion, Lou seconds. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. Agenda is approved as presented. Go to item D, approval of minutes. Any questions on the minutes? If there are none, is there a motion to approve as presented?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Scott makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Alan seconds. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye. Aye. There are no nays. It's approved. We will go to public hearings. We have none today. We will go to new business, the board and commission training with the CDRB. Staff, if you could take over.
Yeah, Chair, Commission, and members of the CDRB, just to kind of give a precursor to City Attorney Beatty, who prepared the handout that should be in front of each of your microphones tonight. That will be the information that he'll walk through this evening. The first comment I want to make is we're in a formal environment, right? We're sitting at the dais and we're in our commission roles, but this is meant to be an informal discussion, so ask questions. It's supposed to be a back and forth. We wanted both groups, while you have different missions and you have different review areas, they're often on the same projects, and so there are some overlap, or at least where things fit together. So we wanted to make sure that the conversation was held jointly so you could hear the thoughts and ideas of each other as you do review development projects, because a successful review from each of the group is meaningful for the city council ultimately to conduct their review and consider of approval. So again, first and foremost, ask questions, have dialogue, and with that, I'll pass it to the city attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. As he said, my name is Ron Beatty. I'm the city attorney. I would second what Mike just said about the informality. I did prepare an outline for you. I don't intend to go through it in any particular order. You can take it home and read it or do whatever you like with it. I'm probably going to skip around a bit, but I do encourage questions as they come up, so that whenever you have any kind of inquiry, please feel free to ask me about it. You know, with groups like this, there's often a variety or a range of experience, so it's a little bit hard to know where to aim the presentation. I tried to do it somewhere in the middle. There are no dumb questions, so please feel free to ask anything. You know, in terms of background and where I'm coming from, I've been the Maplewood city attorney for about 10 years, but I've been a city attorney for about 45 years. And before that, I have a background in planning. I thought I wanted to be a city planner, so I got a master's degree in planning and then decided to go to law school after that. So much of my bias is towards planning issues. So, you know, where do advisory commissions come from? The answer is both the statute and city ordinances, particularly with regard to the Planning Commission. That's a statutory creature. The Land Planning Act, which guides planning in the state, says that cities may create a planning agency, which can take the form of either a planning commission or a planning department. Most cities, other than very small cities, have planning commissions, and obviously that's what you have. So much of your authority comes from state statute. That's supplemented by city ordinances, and I know you also have a handbook. The Community Design Review Board does not have a statutory authority. That's purely a creature of city ordinance. And so there's a more limited a range of duties there, but they're specified pretty well in the city code. And again, the handbook applies to those as well. So what's the purpose of an advisory commission or advisory commissions? I think that there are probably three principal purposes. The first one, I would say, is to develop a degree of expertise. The idea is for people to be on a commission and spend time, become subject matter experts, if you will, which becomes very valuable for the city council. They will rely on your judgments and recommendations. And the idea is that when you make a recommendation, that it be an informed opinion. One of the other purposes, I think, is to help the council with its workload. Lots of things come before the city council. They have a limited amount of time. One of the things that staff does is take the large amount of material that's involved, particularly with land use and related applications, and digest that, produce staff reports, which are then sent to the commissions. But your job is much the same, to again digest that material and try to put it in a form that makes it easy for the council as the ultimate decision makers to understand the material and reach a decision fairly and quickly. Without doing that, the council would have to spend a great deal more time than they have in trying to deal with the large number of issues that come before them. And I think the third reason that's important is to establish a record, because whatever the city decides is subject to challenge, and if there is a challenge, we're going to live or die on the strength of the record that we make. And the record is made all along. The staff report, the planning commission minutes, whatever comes out at the public hearings that are held largely before the commissions, all of that forms the record that upon review will be the basis for whether the city's decision is upheld or overturned. When commissions deal with applications, and this is particularly true for the Planning Commission, those reviews fall into two large buckets. One is legislative and one is quasi-judicial. Legislative is exactly what it sounds like, making law. When the Planning Commission or other commissions comment on the comprehensive plan, on any kind of zoning, those are legislative functions. And when I say zoning, I mean either text amendments or rezoning, map changes. All of that is legislative. Cities have the broadest degree of discretion with regard to legislative matters because you're making law, you're making policy. And even though the commissions don't make the ultimate decision, your review of the comprehensive plan and zoning amendments and rezonings are all part of that record that goes up to the council, and which results in the council either adopting or not adopting or amending the comprehensive plan or the zoning ordinance. The other way in which the commission's work is what's called quasi-judicial. Probably more of your work actually falls into that category, because what that is after having legislated and adopted an ordinance or a comprehensive plan, as applications come in, reviewing those applications in light of the enacted comprehensive plan or zoning ordinance is a quasi-judicial function. You've established that gas stations ought to be conditional uses in the whatever zone, and established conditions in the ordinance that they have to meet. That's the legislative function. When an application comes in for a gas station in that district, what you're doing in reviewing that application is quasi-judicial. It's comparing the application to the previously established standards that were enacted in the ordinance. There's a much narrower degree of discretion with regard to quasi-judicial matters. There's still discretion, but it's narrower, and courts will look at quasi-judicial decisions more closely than they will legislative decisions. All land use applications or all land use decisions have to be based on facts, and it has to be based on facts that are relevant to the decision. That's a positive way of saying that decisions can't be arbitrary and capricious. Court doesn't have to agree with your decision. It doesn't have to, and when I say you, I mean the city's decision as it percolates up through the commissions to the council. The judge doesn't have to decide that he or she would have decided the matter the same way the city does, but he looks at it or she looks at it in terms of whether there's any rational basis for that. And so again, that's based on facts and facts that are relevant to that particular application. So you go through all of this work and digest the material and spend time at meetings and listen to lots of people at public hearings who have lots of things to say that probably aren't very relevant, but you're very patient and listening through all of that. And you make a recommendation and it goes to the city council and they don't follow it. So what does that mean? I guess the first thing I would say is join the club. That happens to staff as well. It happens to the city attorney. I give my best opinion to the city council, and they can decide, they can weigh that along with all the other factors. And that's really their job. They've got a much broader purview than any of the rest of us. And so when an item comes before the council, they hopefully will take the expert opinion, the recommendation, and give it the weight that it should have, but weigh that along with lots of other factors. They have to consider the broader policy considerations. They have to consider financial issues. They have to consider political implications. I mean, politics is not a dirty word in this context. That is one of the factors that they have to weigh. I don't think that means that your work is not important. In fact, I think it's very important. But I know sometimes it can be discouraging when you spend a lot of time, particularly on a controversial matter, and the council doesn't follow the recommendation or doesn't follow it completely. I don't think that's a reflection on your work. That's just part of the way it goes. I don't know whether applicants very often contact any of you before a hearing. That comes up more frequently with regard to city council. But if you get contacted by an applicant, first thing to remember is there's no requirement that you have to speak to them outside of a public hearing. You're not prohibited from doing that, but if you choose to engage with them, I would recommend that you listen more and talk less. And certainly don't make a commitment with regard to how you're going to decide anything. And if that person says something that influences you, which they may well, or shows you a document or something that influences your opinion, I think that's fine. But then that needs to be evidence that's also produced at a public hearing or at a meeting. In other words, you shouldn't rely on something that you heard or saw or were told privately. If it's important, urge that person to come to the meeting or to submit something in writing so that that's a fact. If it is a fact, you know, one of the purposes of meetings is for people to be able to challenge facts. But it becomes part of the record, and everybody on the commission has access then to the same information and can evaluate that. Yes,
Wouldn't you suggest it's best not to even go down that road? Kind of say that we were really not allowed to discuss that in private? To kind of stray away from that?
well, I think that's certainly something that you can do, and you would keep yourself out of trouble if you did that. I'm just saying, as a legal matter, you're not required to do that. I think that your handbook certainly suggests that you do that. And again, with all the caveats that I mentioned, it may well be safest thing to do to politely tell somebody that, you know, you're more than willing to listen to whatever they have to say at a public meeting or submit anything in writing so that you can evaluate it, and your fellow commission members can do the same thing. And it can be, especially at a public hearing, it can be challenged so that the best evidence can come out. So that's certainly something that you can do.
And we're not allowed to discuss it amongst us privately either, like the commission, like call each other and talk about it either, right? That's,
Yeah, well, that was one of the issues that I was going to get to,
okay,
yes.
sorry for jumping ahead.
Well, no, I think that's fine. Yeah, that touches on the open meeting law, which I know all of you are familiar with. Applies to the city council, it applies to all the commissions. All meetings are open unless there is a specific statutory provision that allows the meeting to be closed. That comes up occasionally with regard to city council meetings. I can't think in all my years as a city attorney, I can't recall an incident where a board or commission closed a meeting, because the things that you're allowed to, the city is allowed to close meetings for are just not things that boards or commissions generally do. So everything has to be in an open meeting. You can, what you don't want to do is called serial meetings, and I think that's what you're referring to. And by that I mean talking one by one. You can discuss matters with less than a quorum of your members, but what you don't want to do is call member A and discuss the matter and find out where he or she is, and then call member B and have a similar discussion, and then call member C. If the purpose of doing that is to form a consensus, that's a serial meeting, and that's a violation of the statute. So I would be very careful about discussing things with fellow commission members outside of the context of this, of a public meeting. And, you know, and yes,
You said in contention, you cannot discuss the contents of the meeting before or after the meeting itself with a typical applicant, right?
well, I would avoid doing that, because I think the record of the meeting, first of all, before the meeting, as I said, I think what you want to say is, come to the meeting and present whatever you want to present, send whatever you want in writing. If there's a public hearing, that's your opportunity to tell us whatever you want. We'll listen to that. We'll take all of that in. So going back to the question that just came up, I would probably avoid having discussions beforehand. In terms of afterwards, the record stands for itself. I mean, you will produce minutes, there will be a recording of the meeting, that's what occurred. And there's really no reason to have a further discussion.
Well, I'm looking at it from a different context, in the sense that after the meeting been concluded, and we walk outside, or we're going home, or we leave, and then somebody will say, okay, listen, I will talk to Mike, I will talk to, the applicant have problem or concern, say, okay, as a member of the commission, you still have some kind of influence, and you may say, okay, I will call the staff tomorrow to talk to them, and then I will let you know.
That's fine. I mean, I think those sort of things, or it's telling somebody that they should contact the staff if you have a further question about one of the conditions that were imposed, call the staff and ask them. I think that kind of thing is fine. But speaking of meetings, I mean, one of the definition of meeting is actually very broad. It's not just instances in which you are making decisions. It's any instance in which information regarding the city is being discussed. That's why this is a meeting. We're not expecting to make any decisions tonight, or at least in this context, but that there is that you're all sitting here listening to a discussion about how boards and commissions work, which is clearly related to the city. That's receiving information. Even if you take no action and don't do anything about it, that's a meeting as defined by the courts. And so that's why this had to be a meeting tonight. So pretty broad.
I think too, it's important that we don't, a very wise man told me that we don't put our emotions into it, that we make a decision on the facts and the law, and that sometimes when people come up to us, we get emotional about it, and we need to learn not to, that's not how we make our decisions here. We need to make it by the facts and the law.
Well, that's exactly right, and that applies to staff. I mean, the first cut at all of this is staff taking an application in, reviewing all the material, exercising their professional judgment and making a recommendation based on what the ordinance requires. Whether they like the application or not personally doesn't really matter. It's them exercising their judgment as professionals. Then it goes to the commissions, and your job is to do the same thing. And ultimately, it's the council's job to look at it in the same way, although with a broader perspective. Now, the council has more discretion because, of course, in the end, they can legislate, they can change things. Staff can recommend changes. Planning commissions and other commissions can recommend changes, and that happens quite frequently. You see an ordinance that doesn't work. We keep seeing applications for something that doesn't seem to work. And so you make a recommendation that the ordinance be tweaked in some way or modified or even eliminated. I mean, all of that's part of the process. Ultimately, that decision, of course, is left to the city council. But again, based on your judgment, your experience with problems with the ordinance, I mean, your staff and the commissions are a good way for the council to learn that there is a practical problem with the way the ordinance is written. It might have been intended to do something, but as a practical matter, it's not working out that way, so let's tweak it.
So then why do we have planning commission members' telephones on the city website if we really should not be interacting with the public that calls us regarding a given subject matter?
Well, I don't know why your telephone numbers are on there. But again, I mean, you're not prohibited from discussing things. I think that you run the risk of the things that we've talked about when you engage with people in any degree of substance.
What if somebody was to offer you money to make a decision, like a bribe? What would you do then?
I-
Do you right away?
I would report that immediately to the city manager. I've only heard of one situation in all my years in which I think that was a credible, that probably happened, which it's probably happened more frequently than that. But we, in Minnesota, I think, rightfully are viewed as having good government. And that's been my experience. I really, I don't see that. You know, I think sometimes cities don't make the best decision, but I don't really see very many instances in which it's a corrupt decision. But certainly, if anything like that happened, absolutely report it. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about a little bit is conflict of interest. That comes up especially, it's especially important with the city council because of their decision-making role, but it also comes up with boards and commissions. You know, in Minnesota, the conflict of interest is really about a financial interest in a matter. And if you have a identifiable financial interest in an application before you, you should recuse yourself from that and announce why that is the case. And that means not only not voting, but also not participating in the discussion. I have seen situations in which people felt free to offer their opinion and then say, oh, but I'm not going to vote. Well, that doesn't really cut it. And what I recommend, I think your handbook says you ought to leave the room. I wouldn't go that far. What I normally recommend is that after saying I have a conflict because I have a financial interest in whatever, and so I'm not going to participate in this, get up from the dais and go sit out in the audience during that discussion and don't participate in the discussion. If you have that kind of conflict, it's important to identify that because when it comes to counting votes, a person who is prohibited from participating because he or she has a financial conflict doesn't count in terms of establishing the numbers. In other words, if there's a 5-person commission and somebody has a conflict, for that vote, it's down to 4 people. Now, that often doesn't change the requirements because you still need you need 3 people to get a majority out of 4, the same as 5. But as you get bigger commissions, sometimes the math changes a little bit. So it's important to know whether that's the reason that you are recusing yourself. There are other forms of conflict of interest that don't rise to that level. It's not a financial issue. And let me go back and say, when I say a financial interest, it has to be something more than de minimis. You know, if there's an application for a new Target store and somewhere in your 401k you own Target stock, I don't think that's a financial interest because it's not going to make any difference whether there's another Target store. If you are an officer of the corporation, then that's different. So you have to use some judgment in terms of the severity of the financial issue.
If you're at middle management kind of type of target, you know.
Well, I guess it depends on whether your compensation is dependent on that. If it's not, then I would say you probably don't have a conflict. If somehow, some way, you are going to be positively affected by that, then, you know, I would err on the side of saying that. The other thing, the kind of conflict that comes up, which is not the legally prohibited conflict, is situations which I would call sort of good government issues. You don't have a financial interest in the matter, but there's an appearance of lack of objectivity. Your church comes in for a variance or a conditional use permit. You don't have any financial interest in that decision, but I think from an appearance standpoint, the public may well say, well, you've got some interest in making sure that this happens. And so for that reason, I think it's appropriate for people to recuse themselves. Again, identify why that is. In that case, though, you're not legally prohibited from voting on it. And so you're not taken out of the numbers. There's still 5 people in that case. You're just not going to vote on it. But that's sort of a detail, a detailed distinction. We talked about the open meeting law. I guess really the only other thing I wanted to talk about was timing statutes, which you're well aware of. 1599 is the one that principally comes up. That's the famous 60-day rule that applies pretty broadly to most things that come in before the city. And on a superficial level, what that means is that the city has 60 days to make a decision about an application. It's really a 120-day rule because the city has a unilateral right to give itself another 60 days, or up to another 60 days if it needs to do so. But the important thing about the statute is that the failure of the city council or the city to act, well, through its council, within that time period, if you fail to deny an application, it's automatically deemed approved. So one of the principal jobs that staff has to do is keep track of that and remind commissions who are sort of intermediate in the whole process where we are in the 60-day, because the decision has to be made within that period of time. And that means it has to go through staff, it has to go through a commission. If there's a public hearing, that has to happen, and then it has to go to council, and council has to make the decision within that period of time. So it's important to keep track of that. Plats or any kind of subdivision are an exception because they actually there's a separate timing statute that deals with plats. Again, it's 60 days, but after all the material is submitted, and it's not subject to the same type of rules. Most land use applications that are going to come in, though, are going to be subject to 1599. Those are really the topics that I wanted to talk about. And anybody else have any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Can we get sued in any way if there's a wrong decision made or something and they want to just go wildly sue people?
I don't know if I've seen planning commission members get sued. I mean, you would be defended by the city. Normally the city is going to be named. Sometimes council members are named, but unless there's some peculiar reason, their interest would be similar to the city's interest. So I can't remember a situation in which a planning commission or other commission member was sued. Are you planning to do something that would?
No, I just want to make sure that we made a decision. It's like, and then all of a sudden something went wrong, and it's like, oh, well, that was not the right place to put that building. Now we're going to blame the city for everything, you know.
Well, people often do that, but here's one of the good sides or positive about not being the final decision maker. All you're doing is making a recommendation. It's those people sitting on the city council who make the decision.
So we don't want that job then, right?
They did it.
So what kind of books would you suggest we read to get more informed about the planning commission?
Books? I don't know if
Laws, or read the codes, or?
well, there's a whole bunch of law you can read. You can start reading Chapter 462. That's the Land Planning Act. I think you probably know most of that just by practical experience. It talks about zoning, subdivisions, conditional use permits, variances, interim use permits, all of the sorts of things that come before you.
Chair and Commissioner, I'll just add, recently staff had sent an email out to the group about comprehensive planning and some sessions with metro cities. So there's organizations like that in Minnesota and the Twin Cities that do provide opportunities for additional training or just opportunities to learn. So if you're interested in that, we try to push those out when we can to the group, but also contact staff and we can find additional resources. There's lots of things out there if you want to dive deeper into this world.
Right, I think Al and I went on one of those things one time, didn't we, Al? We went on some training.
Yes, I've been to a couple of them, and some of them I learned through my own association with some of my past experience, my association, while I was in school, member of an organization, client organization. Yeah, so I'm still a member of some of them, so I get most of the details most of the time. What is involved, you know. So in case there is a new law that is applicable, I will, you know, most of the time I contact Mike, let him know that, oh, this is out there, can we benefit from it and stuff? You know.
When you say that we know all those rules and that, I don't know that I've actually physically read, we've done it through experience, but I don't know that I've ever really read all those chapters.
Well, you're welcome to read them. Yeah, I don't, I wouldn't you know, I don't know, don't do it when you're sleepy. I think if you read, you know, they can be very technical, and some of them are relatively long. I think if you wanted to do that, I would take it in bits and pieces. And I think what you would find is that even if you haven't read the statute, if you've been on a commission for a while, you're probably pretty familiar with the broad themes of that, because you'll see it in staff reports, and you'll see it just in your experience. I don't think it's necessary to read the statutes.
How about when it comes to, so like, we're gonna be starting to review the comprehensive plan for that. Is there anything that we should be brushing up on ahead of that for, you know,
Well,
ideas?
yeah, that's what I was gonna mention, and I think Mike is right. There is trading out there, and comprehensive plans, as you know, are a big deal, and there's a lot that goes into them. Met Council gives some training, and the league gives some training on those subjects, and so I would look to the staff in terms of how they can help you do that, because you're going to see, that's going to be before you in excruciating detail for a long period of time. And if you haven't been through it before, yeah, it'd probably be good to get a little training before you do that.
Chair and Commission, I'll add that, so those seminars or that I mentioned with Metro Cities, that was in partnership with the Metropolitan Council, and luckily they were recorded, so we can send those out to the group again, those recorded. There were 3 individual sessions, so that if you want a chance. We'll talk a little bit more in here in a few minutes, just briefly on kind of kicking off the comprehensive plan, but know that when we really dig into it later this year, staff and its partners will bring you along with the process.
Now, when we approve comprehensive plans and things, like at the Savannah, you know, we had things that we wanted that were gonna be put into there, and then that big apartment building came in and they went above the height of it. How is it that we can write things and yet they go above it? Is there a way that we can write rules and more dictate on what we can do with properties? Because I know sometimes we bought some properties so that we can kind of dictate what we're gonna do with them. Can't we write more stringent rules about those parcels, or is that not?
Well, the way the city establishes the rules is first of all by zoning, deciding what district it's going to be in, and then decide what the standards for the district are. Height limitations are frequently a part of that, either in terms of number of feet or number of stories. That is what, about 5 stories? Was there a variance granted?
Chair and Commission, yeah, so just some points of fact on that one. So the ordinance said anything above 3 stories requires a conditional use permit. So there was no violation. There was maybe a difference of opinion of what
Strong
occurred.
ones, yeah.
But everything that was approved was to code and was consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Right, and that was one of the things that I think we had done here, is we didn't want it, and the city went ahead and approved it above us. That was one of the disagreements there.
Well, I think the city have the right to do that, considering what might be behind, you know, if you have some kind of limitations around, or maybe the city have a kind of an area that needs to be developed, they have more information than we do. we make recommendations. So it might be a kind of a tax increment area for the city. You know, they have to take that into consideration, the physical and all that stuff. So we just make the recommendation. But at the end, the city make that decision. Maybe there's a grant out there by Metropolitan Council or by the state that requires something like that in the future. You know, it's a long time, you know, information that needs to be put into consideration, which we are not limited. You know, those are the kind of things that have influences there.
Well, as Mike said, in the case of the building that you're talking about, that was done through a conditional use permit. But another way of having flexibility is through planned unit developments. I don't know if that would have worked in that particular case. That's usually more applicable to a subdivision, but that's a way that zoning codes permit the kind of flexibility that is often appropriate. It's difficult to write regulations that apply in all cases, especially when you're developing a large piece of property that may have sensitive areas, either wetlands or woods or something that you want to preserve. And rather than cookie cutting the area into lots meeting minimum size, there might be a good planning reason to concentrate development on one end and leave it open on another end. It's difficult to do that in straight zoning, so PUDs are a way of doing it. Variances are another way of getting some flexibility. I don't like using variances. They should be the exception. But there are times when, again, if you meet statutory and ordinance requirements, the variances are appropriate, so. And ultimately, of course, no matter what rules are written, going back to the legislative function, that can be changed. If there's a 3-story limit in a particular district, and at some point we decide, or the city decides, that that's not high enough, the ordinance can be changed.
Now, as part of the CDRB, to me, it's clear land use is the Planning Commission's prerogative. We don't come into that, but there are cases with the site plan that there is some issues that we don't know if the CDRB has jurisdiction or the Planning Commission has jurisdiction. I'll give you an example. Somebody may come and want to develop the entire property and fill it up with residential property. But we, as a CDRB, may feel that no, you got to leave 50% as open land. You can only build 50% of the property. Is that our CDRB's prerogative, or is that the zoning planning commission's prerogative?
That sounds to me like the Planning Commission's prerogative. I mean, I think it sounds like, I'm not as familiar with your work as I am with the Planning Commission, but it sounds to me like your work would be reviewing the architecture and design of those structures, but in terms of concentrating development on this end and leaving the other end open, I think that is more of a land use planning issue, and I would see that falling within the purview of the Planning Commission. But you know, again, going back to what we talked about before, I know that when applications come through, because there are at least 2 commissions that deal with them, the council, as the ultimate decision maker, gets recommendations from both boards, and one of the jobs that they do is having to evaluate and merge or look at the recommendations from everybody and try to come to the best conclusion.
Because we don't only look at the building, we look at the site plan, which means, hey, provide a sidewalk, provide this much of a setback, provide this kind of trees. So there's a lot of site planning that the CDRB is involved in, and that may overlap with what they are doing.
Yes, I can see that it might.
Chair and Board and then Commissioner, I would say, you know, those are site planning issues, you know, design issues to the site. But then the first example was more of a density issue or lot size, those type of things. And I think that's where I would concur it falls more onto the Planning Commission side But once you have that site established, then the design of that site is where the CDRB would have more influence and review area.
Is it okay that we ask questions that are not in our, like, let's say we're asking a question about some of their building things, and it's not our thing, is it okay to ask those questions, or should we not even go down that and ask those questions?
Well, I'm not sure what those questions would be. You know, if you think that it is relevant to your decision, then I think asking questions is fine.
I think with my experience over here, I think we have been guided very well, positively by the staff on the planning, you know, I mean, for instance, where I'm coming from, it can be a standard stuff that you build 75% of the lot is buildable, you know, it's much better. So that is what the design is going to be based on. At least you have 6 feet over here, 6 feet over here, 150 by 50, 75% of the lot. I mean, I'm talking from the architectural standpoint, where you look at the site itself. And we have been guided with that, I mean, with the staff for years. I think that is, so when it comes to the site plan itself, just like you said, the difference between the CDRB and the Planning Commission, they are supposed to look at the facade, the design of it, whether it fits, you know, into the neighborhood or into what is on the street, whether you want to use bricks or you want to use some other materials for the exterior and all that stuff and things like that, so that it can match, it and look good. From, you know, those are the kind of things that I think belong to CDRB.
Well, that is pretty clear. The building design, we are, but it's a site plan that I'm talking about where there's an overlap. Like applicant by ordinance has to provide 100 parking spots. And it comes, and we give them a variance. They do not have to provide 100 parking spots, provide only 75. So those are the issues that I can see some kind of an overlap between the Planning Commission and CDRB.
So you actually approve of parking things, because we do that all the time too, don't we? Parking spots, that's what we always.
Chair, Commission, and members of the board, yeah, and so in this case, Maplewood doesn't approve variances for parking, but it would be a waiver that the council would ultimately decide. And yeah, that might be an area, or I do believe that would be an area that has site plan implications and then also zoning implications that would require a crossover of recommendation that gets forwarded to the city council.
So does that come about because one of the two has not had their meeting yet? So for example, if Planning Commission is having their meeting prior to CDRB, then the parking issue would come up in our meetings and we would address it. But
I'm saying, in the end though, isn't it just, it's our recommendation anyway, so it all goes to the city council, and they're the ones who ultimately make the decision. So it's, whether it's us making the recommendation or it's the community design, them making the recommendation, it's just a recommendation that goes to city council. And so whether it's us making it or you guys making it, it's simply a recommendation that ultimately goes to city council anyways. And so it's, I think, in a case of a site plan thing, I feel like that could be either group, and it's, might even be both groups that make a separate recommendation. Maybe you guys make a recommendation that there's a variance, and we say, we don't think there should be one, and it could both go to the city council, and they go, well, here we have two conflicting things, and they have to make a decision anyway. So it's not necessarily that it's us making a decision for what's happening, but it's just our recommendation based on our group, our commission.
And I think staff can probably help you with that. I mean, just as the council relies on the judgments from its, and opinions and recommendations from its commissions, the commissions rely on the professional judgment of the staff. I think you've got good staff here, and so I think that helps you make a better decision or a better recommendation, and ultimately to the council.
and that's what I've seen all along, that the staff is always making the recommendations or giving us guidance on what particular aspects we should consider in our meetings versus what goes to CDRB.
And they're pretty tough.
Oh, wait.
If we want to add a new ordinance or law, let's say we don't want panhandlers in Maplewood, is that something we can like bring up at our meetings, or how does that?
Well, I don't know. That raises lots of First Amendment issues. I don't
I'm
know if
just thinking
that's a
about-
land use issue.
Yeah, but that's part of this training for all new commission members. Over my 30 years here sitting, I regularly see people asking questions of the people who come up to defend their application. We should be cognizant of what is the purpose that we are here for, and concentrate only on those aspects and provide our recommendations, but not go into, like, an example, hey, you're gonna put up a saloon here, why do you need one? Or, you know, we've got 15 in town, so why are you the 16th applicant? We should not have that type of a dialogue with the people who are applying for another bar in the town. It's, hey, does it apply on the land use, on the variances, all those aspects that the planning commission is responsible for.
There's a case directly on that, on gas stations, where I think it was in Hopkins, there were 3 gas stations, and somebody came in on 3 corners. Somebody came in on the 4th corner and said he denied it because we don't need more gas stations. That's not the point.
Right.
You know, if it's a permitted use in that district, that's the issue.
Exactly.
So was there a lawsuit done?
Yeah, absolutely. And the city was overruled.
Yep.
Metro 500 case.
Yep. Yeah. So. All right.
Do you think the minutes should be more documented in details, or, because it's, the ones that we see are not very detailed? Is there, because that's what really goes into the records, right? There's not one that's more detailed, right?
Well, I don't read your minutes, so I don't know how detailed they are.
So, Chair and Commission, yeah, so the city has adopted action minutes, not just for the Plan Commission, for all of its.
All commissions.
All commission, board and commissions. Meetings are recorded, so that record is there as well to see the more in-depth detail. But yeah, a decision had been made to go to action minutes.
Okay.
Used to have very detailed meeting minutes that would take hours for the person who is typing it all out. And then I believe that we used to have more errors on it because the person who is typing it out is trying to interpret what they thought they saw or heard. So I think it's better to be staying with this version, and we've got the voice available. People can go back and review that if that's what their desire is.
And when you have detailed minutes, the review of the minutes at the following meeting tend to be very long.
Yes.
That's not what I meant.
Yes.
What I meant was, well, that's not what you said.
Right.
And then there's an argument about that, so.
Yep. Used to happen quite a bit years ago.
Now, when we are given a site to go look at, there's no laws or anything that prevents us from going and looking at that property, like at somebody's house, and they want to look at it, they want to put a garage in their backyard or something. Do we have the right to go and look at the property, don't we, or not?
Well, you certainly have the right to see whatever you can from the public, from public street. I wouldn't venture on somebody's property without knocking on the door and introducing myself and so forth. You know, and depends on how visible the site is. You don't want to alarm anybody or trespass. So introduce yourself. But yeah, part of your job for a site inspection is to be able to go out and look at it, because nothing like actually seeing the site and understanding the lay of the land.
But we can ask them too to see it.
Well, sure, and of course, if they're applying for something, they'd be rather foolish to tell you that you can't look at the site, but I would ask.
Okay.
I will say there's some benefit to going and seeing some of these places. So even if it's to go on to like Street View on Google Maps or something like that. must have been our last meeting, we were talking about the sidewalk at the,
Gun range.
the gun range. And when we were done with this meeting, on my way home, I drove past that just to get a better sense of like, okay, I know we already kind of talked about this, we already made the decision as far as recommendation, but it was just trying to make sure in my head that I knew, okay, what was I, making sure I knew what was the adjacency to, because it's like our maps only go so far from what we're seeing. And it was, you know, in my memory of what was along that street, it was like, okay, yep, and so I drove past it again, I was like, okay, yep, validated what I was thinking in my head as far as what was adjacent, that was beyond what you could see in the maps that were part of the presentation. So it was just, there is a benefit definitely to going near the site and seeing what's around and what's adjacent, so.
Do you foresee that gonna be a problem when the houses go in? I do. I see they're gonna be a big struggle down there. I already talked to a neighbor the other day that didn't have a chance to speak, and he's already said that they were gonna downsize that thing, and now they're building it again, and so he's pretty frustrated that, and now with that new housing development, I don't get it. I just, it's gonna be an issue.
At the golf course, you mean?
Yeah, well, they're gonna put the new gun range that we're putting in there. Well, not new, but they're expanding.
fixing up the
Right.
building.
Yep.
No response on that one, huh?
Well, I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be 207 new houses within, not very far, and some of them quite close. And so
Right.
I'm sure there will be complaints.
Okay.
Let's say there's plenty of other houses that are right next to the gun range already, so it's not like there isn't already homes next to it, so mine being relatively close.
Is it?
I can hear the guns, so I hear the guns on the gun range.
And the builders are gonna tell everybody, hey, there is a gun range close by. Yeah.
It's a recreation range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ron? Nope. Thank you, Ron.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, item number 2 on the new business is 2050 comprehensive plan review.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Commission. This has some information that will be relevant to the CDRB as well. If we could just have a handful of slides, just a few here. Some of this we've touched on during the discussion with Ron, but did want to make note, the city did release its request for proposal to update its 2050, or update its comprehensive plan for looking out to 2050. So this request for a proposal is seeking qualified consultants to assist the city with this process. On the right-hand side, you can find this webpage if you're so interested to review the request for a proposal, and it shows the schedule for that. Proposals are due by the end of July, and then the goal is to have a selected contact and contract in place by the end of August. This whole process will take anywhere from 16 to 18 months, depending on how we're able to move forward. But just to give some context of, what comprehensive planning is and where we're kind of starting from. So the city does have a comprehensive plan adopted in September of 2019. That plan looked out to 2040. Minnesota state law requires that all cities in the 7-county Twin Cities metropolitan area update their plans every 10 years. This is done to ensure consistency and regional coordination among all communities within the metropolitan, and then also aligns with the Met Council's Regional Development Guide. So again, the Met Council oversees and sets requirements for all cities within the 7-county metropolitan area. For those who have gone through the comprehensive plan process, there's different housing goals and land use goals that the city has to achieve within its plan. So that gets established by the Met Council, and that is informed by regional system plans that the Met Council develops for land use, wastewater, parks, these different major areas that have a regional impact. And this all leads to, from a city perspective, to its system statement, and that kicks off this update process. That system statement was released near the end of last year, and that ushers us to where we are today in needing to now update our adopted comprehensive plan. There will be several elements to that plan that are required by the Met Council. That includes land use, housing, you can see the list here, transportation, water resources, and so on. But there will be other elements that the city can add if it so chooses. Like last cycle, the city added a economic development chapter. I would presume that will, or I know, because it's in our RFP, that will be included in this 2050 plan as well, because that's a city priority in addition to these items that we want to prioritize and have a vision for economic development. So while we're speaking, I want to make sure that this group is aware that we're starting this process because the Planning Commission serves as that main advisory body for the entire process. The other city commissions and board also play a role. I know in the 2040 plan, each board and commission touched on the development of that plan. So I know the Community Design Review Board will have an aspect that they will have an opportunity to review and provide input to the plan development. And again, where does the comp plan sit into, this, I thought this was important to have with the combination that you just had with the city attorney, because what is a comprehensive plan and how does it relate to everything else that we're doing? And so on the right-hand side is an illustration, it's called the Pyramid of Discretion from the League of Minnesota Cities. Usually your two groups sit really in that yellow. For the Planning Commission, you sit in the yellow for the most part. Conditional use permits, variances, subdivision applications. The CDRB has some site plan review elements that go in addition to this. At the top, the red, those are more administrative functions, so that's where staff lives and what we review and approve. And then the comprehensive plan every 10 years provides the opportunity for the city to step back and go in the green zone, where you really have that broad policy development on where the city should be going. And once the city adopts its comprehensive plan, the state statute obligates that you take a look at your zoning subdivision ordinance to make sure it's consistent with that plan that you've adopted. So that is done on a system after the comp plans are adopted to, again, create that consistency. The city, Maplewood, took a step further a few years ago and took a holistic look at its zoning code in the independence of needing to from the comprehensive plan, and kind of adopted a recodification of its zoning code. But the city, once this new plan is adopted late next year, will take another look at the zoning code to see what changes need to be made. And the Met Council role, again, in this is established at regional policy, review comprehensive plans for consistency and conformance. And then the last aspect really doesn't apply to Maplewood because it's a largely built-out city. We're not in situations for the most part where we're looking at sewer extensions, but in other parts of the region, that is something that they often interact with on the Met Council level. So looking forward, this is a very quick overview, and I don't want anyone to walk away thinking like that's all the kind of prep you're going to be given, because it's not, because we're going to have several meetings. Almost every meeting, once the process kicks off, we'll touch on the comprehensive plan in some aspect. Depending on kind of how the scope of the work gets developed, there likely could be a stakeholder group or a steering committee. I know for those who served on the Planning Commission, that for the plan that is currently adopted, the Planning Commission led that, but there was a steering committee that met separately outside of these Planning Commission nights.
Will they do that again?
Well, that's, again, to be determined. It's going to be how that scope develops and what the city feels it needs, along with its partner that it brings on board, and then conversations with this group and the city council. So likely there's going to be something that gets developed to guide that process, whether it's just directly the Planning Commission or the Planning Commission and other members of the community, to be determined. But in the fall, the Planning Commission will be given an in-depth overview of this topic matter of comprehensive planning. We'd bring our partner in, and they're going to give you, along with staff, that full knowledge base of what it is that we're trying to achieve and give you the tools to move that forward. And so that's going to include reviewing the requirements of developing the plan, and then a deep dive into the demographics for both the city and the region to understand where those Met Council requirements are coming from and what the city needs to do to incorporate that into their plan. Also in the fall, engagement plan will be presented. I think anything that Maplewood does, this is the case, but especially with the comprehensive plan, engagement will lead that plan, and so that will be very forward to the development of the plan. And engagement, what I mean, is beyond the commission, beyond the city council, to the members, the residents and property owners and other stakeholders in the community, and making sure the plan is brought to them as it's being developed, and they have a chance to provide that influence and feedback as to where the plan is being developed and leading to. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for everyone within the Maplewood community to have impact and provide feedback to where this plan ultimately leads to. So that's just a very quick overview of what's to come. Again, I thought it paired well with Ron's presentation tonight, because it is statutory required why we're doing the comprehensive plan. Many cities throughout Minnesota have comprehensive plans, but when you're in the Twin Cities, you have to update them every 10 years, and so that's what we'll be doing. So I can entertain any questions from either group tonight on.
Just have two things that arbitrarily came to mind.
Yeah,
I'll just throw out to you that by the year 2050, Maplewood, all the energy use shall be 1/3 from renewable sources. Is that something that goes into some comprehensive plan like this?
yes, Chair and Commission, so natural systems, and in the previous plan, we had a sustainability chapter. So that type of energy planning, the city has done work with its climate adaptation planning. That type of work will lead into the comprehensive plan as well. So it's beyond just land use. It is energy systems, and climate will have an element into this plan as well.
And another thing that comes to my mind is by the year 2050, this is just arbitrary. 25% of all multi-family housing shall be designated for affordable, and is for not market rate rentals, but for people who cannot afford it. Would something like that be in the comprehensive plan?
Are you asking, could it be, or it will be?
Could it be?
Chair and Commission, I mean, I suppose if the city wanted to make some kind of vision or planning goal for that, that's something that could be discussed. That's something that would have to go through the policy development through the plan with the Planning Commission and the City Council to determine if that's a goal that would want to be established.
So do we also look backwards, like our current comprehensive plan, what items have not been achieved into that 10-year plan that we really should address for the next 10?
Yeah, Chair and Commission, with any good planning, you want to look backwards and see what you've done, what you've achieved, and what you didn't, and then understand why. So I know in the 2040 plan, we did that with the 2030 plan, and going through those goals and different metrics to see where were the wins, where were the things that missed the boat or just needed more attention to or needed to go in a different direction. So I would expect a similar exercise to occur with this planning process.
Has Met Council given you any kind of direction already, which they want to go, like with more dense housing or anything? Have they given any kind of direction already so far, what they want to change?
Chair and Commission, so that's what that system statement is. That's the Met Council saying essentially what it expects from the City of Maplewood's plan. I know we've discussed that aspect, Paul, in the past, where what the Met, generally the city and the Met Council haven't had too many issues in coming together to move forward in terms of its land use planning. The density, uniformly throughout the city, there's going to be needs to be an average of 14 units per acre. Based on current density throughout the city, there's probably some work that needs to be looked at on what land use gets designated where and what those patterns are, but the city's pretty close to that already. So I wouldn't expect to see a huge jump on type of density or land use planning that we would need to incorporate to meet that goal. Fortunately, I think the city is in a position where it can focus on its goals, its vision, and what it wants to see in a plan.
If there were to be a need for more housing units based on the Met Council, what they're asking for, is that a situation where then the city, to facilitate that, steps in and acquires properties to get them in position so that they could be developed?
So what a comprehensive plan
Would
does.
that be part of the comprehensive plan?
So a comprehensive plan sets density ranges throughout the city, and then when you aggregate that, it gives you an overall density. What the city has to do is provide the opportunity for that density to occur. It does not need to make sure it occurs. That market will determine that.
You have to the cost to develop that property, that a developer could make those changes.
Correct.
Okay.
It's all
Thank you.
about zoning.
Yep.
Also, we've had a lot of controversy on transit in the last few years. Is that going to again be addressed in this 2050?
With the
comprehensive plan?
Chair and Commission, with the 2050 plan will incorporate our the existing transit network. It's not necessarily making decisions on, does it prefer this line, or should it be, it's not reopening discussions on where a line should be, what mode it should be. It's incorporating decisions that have been made. And then what the impact to this group would be, are there land use implications because of those decisions that need to be looked at?
It's gonna be flying cars then, what are you talking about?
All right, waiting
Just-
for it.
Just one more question
Yeah.
with the two golf courses. I know one was in St. Paul, but, Hillcrest going away and then the ponds. Will this define like what the plans for like county-owned properties that reside inside the city of Maplewood? Does that,
So
That all
that's,
gets
that's a
covered?
that's a decision that can be made through the planning process. There's not a clear answer. The city can take different tacks. Right now, the county properties are guided institutional. If the county had come to the city and said, we know this land, we're gonna sell it, or we would like to be part of a redevelopment project, that would be the opportunity for the city to then step back, like it did with the golf course in the south part of the city, and did a small area planning exercise to kind of develop some potential scenarios. The city could take a different tack and just re-guide properties to what it thinks it should be, or what it believes, or what it desires it to be. The city has that ability to take either approach.
So if we're building the 50s, what one are we basically working on right now that we're really focusing on? Are we in the 30s or what's,
Chair and Commission, so the current plan is the 2040 comprehensive plan, so
so we're not,
the city is required to look out essentially 20 years beyond where we're at.
Okay.
And that happens every 10 years,
so we're not in the 30s, we're really in the 40s.
And yes, it currently, and then another 10 years, the city will be looking at developing a 2060 plan.
Okay. How realistic is it that they fulfill even half the stuff?
Well, it depends on, like, from city goals or,
Yeah, because I know some of it's a dream, but,
Chair and Commission, without having done that type of analysis on the existing plan, I don't want to give a percentage or, but I think you'd probably be surprised by how far cities tend to make progress on
Okay.
those type of goals.
that's good to hear.
Any other questions? All right, we will go to item number 3, that's election of officers. So amongst the 6 of us here, we got to decide who's gonna chair and co-chair.
Chair and Commission, I'll just provide context. It's in your rules of procedure. You see this in June of every year. Currently, Commissioner Desai is your chairperson, Commissioner Lang is your vice chairperson, and as the chairperson mentioned, it's a discussion that you can have on who you'd like your officers to be moving forward, and ultimately that will need a motion to move that forward.
I can run again if you're willing to vote again or keep it the same. or-
I'm good, huh?
I would like to make a motion.
You guys don't want to talk before?
Well, I'd like to nominate Tom Osmond to be vice chair.
Okay, all right,
Is that something you want to do, Tom?
okay. Anybody else, any others?
Are you willing to give up, or still want to run, or?
I'm willing to give up if somebody else wants to do it, that's not a problem.
I can be,
I can,
You can be a chair?
no,
Yep.
I will be, no, I don't have the time. I don't have the time.
I can run chair if you want.
Okay, any other suggestions?
You up, anything? Okay.
All right, so we've got a nomination for Paul to be the chair,
Tom?
Tom to be the vice chair. Is there a motion? Want to make a motion?
I will make a motion to make Paul Arbuckle the chair and Tom Osmond the vice chair.
Is there a second?
Second?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. We have got a new chair and a vice chair. All right, good job,
Back
guys.
to the king again.
Get this out. All right, so we don't have unfinished business. Commission presentations, none. Staff presentations,
Chair and
none.
commission, nothing further for you tonight.
All
right.
Don't we want to hear from the city manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, the CDRB, thank you. I don't come often, but this was an important conversation because the city values your contributions and what this means right? So every once in a while, it's good to have some training on what are the rules and how do you behave and a reminder of all of the legal requirements, but I think the comprehensive plan is really an important conversation. And so you'll be guiding it for the next year and a half. Staff will be there to support you the whole way, but it is a really important conversation that it be done well because the community is going to be different. And so thinking through all of the implications, whether it's around energy or it's around environment or it's around housing, it's a really big deal. And I have come to be persuaded by staff that it's one of the most important things that we do. And so I just want to come and say thanks and listen and just appreciate and offer my appreciation to all of you. So thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to say that at the end of this session now, on behalf of the Planning Commission, I want to appreciate the staff for the guidance they have provided us on a professional level. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, most of our thinking with my level jives, and I can see we benefit from it. But I would like to suggest that we have more in-house training. In-house, up to date, in terms of planning. I mean, physical planning itself, because you can see, I'm not lodging for the chairmanship. I've been there, I know how it. But the fact is that there might be some conflict in discussion sometimes in terms of perspective because of background, So if you have more education or more alignment of what is happening, people might be guided and provide some very good, conclusive policy or suggestion while we were doing this.
Yeah, thanks, guys, yeah. I don't like the ruler on the hands very much, though.
Keep that ruler handy.
Will do.
All right, there's nothing more. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.